G'day everyone, I'm Smokescreen and welcome back for another video. Here we go. It's actually my first look at rain in Gran Turismo Sport. This is the first race I did. So the introduction of rain into the game was sort of everyone was kind of asking for it, and then when it came, people were underwhelmed because it was only on technically two tracks, and it wasn't this one. So it was Red Bull Ring and Red Bull Ring Short version had rain, and you know, people didn't really use it that much. It wasn't, you know, it really did not live up to be what people portrayed they wanted it to be, if you know what I mean. Like the community was just like, oh my god, we need rain, I want to race with rain, I want wet circuits, and then one came and it was kind of like you never really saw it being used. So I don't know, but then a few months after they added it on Tokyo Expressway, the East and Central Loops, and it was a daily race C at that point, as in like it was a daily race C the same week of the update, and I had a couple of goes around it, and this was actually the first time. So we're going to just commentate for a little while into turn 1. We actually dive down the inside of two people. Now, you see how messy it gets up ahead, and you see how slow we just have to go through those corners there. And I'll talk about everything as we get later into the race. But yeah, turn 2 there, up into 4th. Didn't quite catch where we qualified. 5th, I think we qualified, so it wasn't too bad. But yeah, so you see, well, I say you see, maybe you don't. There's a lot of spray from the cars up ahead. So obviously that is realistic. There's going to be a lot of spray in real life. We'll see what happens as we go into the high-speed chicane, which has now been rendered down to a mid to low-speed chicane thanks to the lack of grip. The Honda grazes off the wall, it gets a bit of a poor run. Look up the inside there, but we don't quite go for it at that particular point in the racetrack there. The Mercedes up in second grazes off the wall. Honda goes into the back of him, and I end up going past that Honda thanks to his loss of speed. So up into third, massive bit of snap over there. Oh, look at that. That's really awkward there. So a bit of lag sort of helped out with that. Mercedes got a bit of snap oversteer going up the hill and smashed into the wall, and then it sort of lagged a bit, and then I smashed into him. He got himself 2 lots of 5-second penalties in the process, which adds up to 10. So he's going to serve that now because the yellow bar had started to fill up by the time he got that second penalty. So we're going to roar past him, and we're up into second at the end of the first lap. Watch the radar there. Citroen goes flying down the inside. So we managed to avoid that so slow around there. That corner goes on for ages, around 40 k's an hour around that corner there. But onto the straight. So what hasn't changed is on the straight, there's still going to be very much a slipstreaming tactic going on. So see, I whacked my hazards on there. That's my way of communicating. I really want you to go into the back of me because I want to be pushed up to the lead, and then if you work together, the pair, as in me and the person pushing me up the road with slipstream, can catch up to that leader. And you know, especially I really kind of need that just because I'm in the Subaru. Now we'll talk about that. Obviously the car I'm using is the Subaru WRX Group 3, and actually I bump draft the Honda there. Hopefully he gets the memo next time around. We'll go into turn 1 though. We'll come back to the car in a second. So confident on the brakes in this car down into turn 1 there. A little bit of snap on the exit there, but traction control helping nicely, and that is of course me using traction control. So I think I'm on level 2 or 3 traction control, and I know that's a bit controversial, but I figure when it comes down to having a good race or controlling the car, I want to have a good race, especially because in the rain controlling the car is extremely difficult, and if anything it inhibits me at some corners, especially the long flowing corners of turn 3 and 4, which would be flat out, but the traction control cuts in and out to stop the car turning around on itself. But I just figure, what's the point of doing a race where you can't be in a good position because you can't control the car thanks to the wet road? So I just put traction control on, and I'm sure other people are not using it, and that might be why I'm in quite a high position. But yeah, that's all I'm going to say about it. So, you know, that's all. So you can see throughout the course of this lap the leader's actually pulled away, and actually one more word on that, you can go fast without traction control, and we're actually going to experiment with that here coming down into the hairpin. I flick it onto traction control, so I was using level 2. So we'll go into the hairpin now, just looking out for any dive bombs on the inside. Don't quite get one there, and then on the exit of the corner, a little bit of oversteer there, but then coming through this little kink here, I turn off traction control, and you just see how squirrely the car gets, and there is just a massive incident there, and I get a 2-second penalty because I think I pinched a Mercedes into the wall on the inside when I was coming back onto the racing line. So that was my attempt at not using traction control, so we're swiftly back up into traction level 2, almost as swiftly as we're down into 5th place all of a sudden. So that was me demonstrating I kind of need traction control, at least at the time where I recorded this, which was many months ago. I've had this sitting in my backlog for a little while, and I've finally gotten around to recording it. So down the straight now, in the slipstream of the Porsche, which is in turn in the slipstream of the BMW M3, which is not a very popular car here, and then we're confident on the brakes once again into turn 1. I don't really know why my competitors aren't as confident as me on the brakes. Actually, a nice Oreo livery on the BMW there. Side by side through turn 2. Not a good idea. BMW pinches the Porsche into the wall, and I end up going into the back of the Porsche. My original intention was to follow the Porsche through on the inside, as the BMW would have ended up wide. So yeah, not a good sort of lap and a bit there. Obviously will serve my 2-second penalty at the end of this lap before the hairpin. So back onto the car, Subaru WRX. It is a car, 521 horsepower. It's really good handling wise, so it's good through this section here, demonstrating that right now, going around the outside of the Porsche. I think he's still side by side with me. Yes, he is at that point, but he just falls in behind. BMW slides into the wall, and I end up going past him as well. Moses getting his fair share of work in there today, and we're back up into 3rd, 8 seconds off the guy in 2nd, so I lost that position when I experimented with traction control. So you see, I'm winding up to serve that penalty now. Car moving all over the road on the exit of corners there, even with traction control, but without it, I would be spinning around, facing the wrong direction, and I would have significantly more penalties. Pulling off the racing line there to serve my penalties there gives me the inside for the hairpin, onto the brakes, and I just massively misjudge it, and I slide into the wall and get a 5-second penalty. BMW follows me wide. I actually get reset, which doesn't help really, because I was halfway through the corner. I could have just powered onto the straight, but no. It resets me back, and I have to take the corner properly. Fair enough, I guess. Down into 9th, and we've got a 5-second penalty to serve. So this race is going downhill quickly. Now, I was with traction control. I actually felt quite okay with this combination. So you can see that by me being very confident on the brakes and around the corners. I can go side by side with cars because I'm not too worried about spinning out. So. And this car is also good on corners, I was saying before, but it is very poor down the straights. You see how quickly, look at that overspeed there between me and the Jaguar, which has good straight line speed, I guess. So yeah, I lose out on the straight, but I'm gaining through the twisty section. You actually have a look on the map on the top right hand corner. The leader's going through that high-speed chicane, and I'm not even into turn 1. Jaguar gets the entry to turn 1 messed up quite a lot. I end up making my way up the inside there. Turn 2, turn in nice and early, and then power down the hill. Bit of a slide, don't quite touch the wall there, so that was a good little bit of race driving, racecraft, I suppose. High speed turn 3 and 4 flat out, even with traction control. I'm pretty sure you wouldn't spin out going through there without traction control, but it's cutting in and out anyway, so I'll just live with that. It keeps me for a nice line through the chicane, because I don't quite slide as wide as I would like to through turn 4. So get through this section nicely. You just keep an eye on up ahead, 8th and 9th, so they're quite close together. They're going to be fighting, and I'm actually gaining massively. Have a look at the gap. It's under a second now, 9/10 coming into turn 9 now, and we're going to head up the hill, up the little slip road towards turn 10, well into the slipstream of that McLaren now, 0.4 of a second. He goes really slow through turn 10 actually, and actually gets a massive kick of oversteer. Look how sideways his car was going through on the exit of turn 10 into turn 11. So we're going to head down the slip road now. We're going to serve my 5-second penalty I got after sliding into the wall, so hopefully we don't make a hash of this corner now that I've slowed right down. So we're going to be nice and careful now on the brakes, nice and early. They're actually on the brakes way early. Jaguar is way wide, but that'll get him a good run onto the straight. Just miss his back quarter panel there. We're just going to stick in his slipstream, get a nice straight line exit through the little kink there after turn 12, and we're onto the main straight of Tokyo Expressway East Outer Loop. So the tracks that got rain in the last update before this footage here was the Tokyo East Outer and Inner and Tokyo Central Outer and Inner loops, and previously Red Bull Ring, the full circuit and the short circuit got rain as well. And then as of right now recording the voice, we now had Spa added to the game, and that was added with a rain time of day as well. So that's the way the rain is implemented. So when you do your combinations, there's a time of day selection. So some tracks have night racing as well. So that's always interesting. So the rain is just added as a different time of day. So there'll be a time of day option, and it will be raining. So it won't always be rain, but on some combinations you can choose it, and on some tracks you can choose it. I'm sure they're working on adding more tracks into the game now. I'm not a massive fan of the wet, to be honest. I feel like I can't race as confidently, although I am quite confident in this combination because I had practice. You see the Jaguar gets the chicane massively wrong and makes a weird attempt to try and block my way past, so I don't quite make advantage of that. But blocking when you're making mistakes isn't really the way to go, because if you're making mistakes, they're just going to pass you anyway. Especially if they're a better driver than you, they'll work out how to get past even with you blocking. So Jaguar was really wide, but that's actually good. You actually do want to maximise the circuit there. You can carry the most speed that way. And I look down the inside of turn 10. Doesn't quite work out. Jaguar was wide off the apex though. Get a nice little cut back, but it doesn't quite translate into an overtake. So this is where traction control can kind of be a hindrance more than anything, because it was really cutting down the power there, and I feel like if I didn't have that on, I could have launched into the gap and got my way up the inside. Jaguar, really dirty move there, brakes way too late and grinds off the wall to get the car stopped in time. He ends up sailing wide anyway, and we managed to get ourselves almost into the slipstream of the McLaren now. He's really good down the straight, so if you're in a poor straight line speed car, the car you want to be behind is the fastest car, because you'll get the sort of largest amount of slipstream, if that kind of makes sense. So we're in the slipstream of the McLaren now. We're actually fairly evenly got similar speeds, and I'm actually gaining on him now. McLaren is really quick in a straight line, and I'm sure any other car in the slipstream can match it. But actually, have a look at the gap between me and the McLaren now. It's actually extending. I'm in slipstream, McLaren is not, and yet the McLaren is still gaining on me. So that's how quick that car is, and I have demonstrated and explained that many times in the past. But it mainly just demonstrates how poor my Subaru is. Into the braking zone of turn 1, McLaren's really wide, bounces off the wall. It's just really awkward because he's really slow on the racing line, but I just let him back in ahead, even though I was going to make my way past anyway, and I'm sure we'll make my way past at some point, side by side coming down the hill towards turn 3. But we're going to go side by side through here. Do I let the McLaren in ahead? It's probably not best to go side by side. I actually do attempt to go side by side. McLaren actually pulls out, even though he was on the inside. I suppose it would have translated to the outside of this corner here. McLaren looks up the inside, but the gap is not quite there, and when we fall back into single file through the, I guess it's now a mid-speed chicane. Normally it's a high-speed chicane in the dry, but not quite in the wet. Into turn 8 now. The bridge that you go under, the track's actually dry, so you can get a nice bit of traction on the entry to that corner. And we're just going to fast forward a little bit here. Yellow flag into the hairpin. It kind of works itself out. We don't really make any gains of position. 8th place down the straight, second to last lap. So we'll have a look at lap times. I'm putting in 2:20s and 2:19. Leader has put in a 2:15.1, so I'm quite a few seconds off the pace, and that isn't helped by the poor straight line speed of my car. We'll come back to real time now. The 7th place up ahead in the, what's that, a Toyota FT1. grinds off the wall, going through turn 9. We're going to be able to make this position up. We probably will at some point. We'll just see what corner it eventuates. So we're going to head down the hill now. This corner is really bad for oversteer. You see it's demonstrated by the Toyota up ahead, because the track falls away and you're still turning as you're getting on the power, so the back end wants to overtake the front end of the car. On the brakes nicely into the hairpin. Actually judged quite nicely, maybe a little bit deep. Toyota FT1 performs a cutback on me. Can we perform another cutback on the exit? On the power nice and early. Toyota FT1 squirreling all over the road, painting with his rear tyres. And I think we do make a slight bit of contact there as he crashes into the wall, and he actually gets a 1 second penalty for that. So maybe that's a hard one, because you normally get like a 4 or 5 second penalty if you force the car into the wall. Maybe it was contact between our cars at fault of him, and he gets that 1 second penalty onto the final lap. So as long as we can stay with him, I mean, to be honest, we'll probably overtake him through the twisty section. But the Toyota FT1, much like the Subaru, is good around corners, got good handling. He takes a weird inside line, grazing the wall. That'll loosen him a few k's an hour. Into turn 1, I'm looking up the inside. We'll just see if the move is on the brakes nicely. Yes, nice and confident once again on the brakes into turn 1. And I'm actually left enough space on the inside. The Toyota FT1 does turn in, but realises I'm there and then turns out of it. And there was no contact between us. Nice line through turn 2 there. That was a good little exit there, and you see we've actually already got 1.5 seconds on the Toyota FT1. So we'll just have a look at the gap between me and the guy in 6, Piquet. Oh, usually Japanese, probably Piquet. 09:15. Just keep an eye on the gap between us as we go through the last lap now. High speed chicane flat out through turn 6. Thanks to a nice line through turn 5, flat out turn 7, and then into turn 8. Turn in nice and early, get nice and close to that apex, power up the hill. 4.3 seconds to Piquet now, so that gap is tumbling really quickly. He's actually stuck behind the guy in 5th. You see up ahead how close they are. You can see by their heads-up displays that the information above their cars. 2.9 seconds as we exit turn 11 onto the little straight. Now you see the leader in 2nd place plummeting down into the tunnel already, and we've still got the hairpin to do, so they're coming up towards the finish line already. Let's see how close we can get through the hairpin now. On the brakes nicely, BMW, so there he is. We've actually caught up. They've been fighting quite hard throughout the last last lap, I suppose, is when I've really been seeing some large gains. Am I quite able to get into the slipstream? Maybe if I had a car that was a bit better in this straight line, maybe I could, but I don't think it's quite going to pay off, as we're 1.5 seconds back, which is out of slipstream range in this version of the game. So we just flick into chase cam momentarily. You can have a quick look at that Karcher livery, which is quite appropriate considering the weather conditions. But we're going to come across the line, and it's going to be a 7th place. So actually we set the fastest lap, or my personal best lap of the race at 2:16, so that's not too bad compared to the pace that we saw as the fastest lap at 2:15 or 2:14 or something. So that was a 7th place, and that was my first race. There'll be another video, and there'll be another couple of races. So I thought we'll just try a different car. It was actually the Ford GT that was dominating the leaderboards in this particular week, so we do give that car a go in another video, so keep an eye out for that. But as for this video, not quite the result I wanted, but a nice little look at the rain and how it was introduced into Gran Turismo. But that's going to be the end of this one today, so I hope you enjoyed. Do hit that like button if you did, and if you would like to see more videos, do hit that subscribe button down below. It would be greatly appreciated. But that's going to be it for the video today, and that means that is it from me. So once again, I do thank you very much for watching. See you later.